Hello. Welcome to this talk all about leaking, why we leak, and more importantly, how we can stop leaking and how we can improve our pelvic. Ultimately, we can improve our pelvic floor. If we want to, that's something that we can all try and work towards. So if you're listening in, then I'm assuming that you do probably want to do something about it, and you're probably having leaks, maybe occasionally, maybe regularly. Now I'm going to just start by talking a little bit about what leaking is, just as a bit of a definition to understand. So when I'm talking about leaking, I'm talking about leaking wee, sometimes leaking poo, but most of the time we're talking about leaking urine, leaking wee. Now, there's two specific types of, it's called incontinence. There's urge incontinence and there's stress incontinence. Now, the urge incontinence is when you need to rush to the toilet. You feel that sudden need to go for a wee, and then you feel like you need to rush there because maybe you can't make it. Maybe there's like real panic inside. So that's urge incontinence. And then the stress incontinence is more about leaking on impact or from pressure internally. So that might happen if you're running, jumping, coughing, laughing, so that sort of thing. So when you have those accidental leaks, when you do a sneeze or you've got a cough, that's called stress incontinence. And it's useful just to have a bit of an understanding of those two different sorts of sort of leaking and what's going on there. Now, there's lots of reasons why that might be happening for you, and the first place to start is to understand what's actually happening with the pelvic floor muscles. Now, a couple of things could be happening. It could be that it's not contracting, particularly on stress incontinence. It's not contracting to protect your pelvic organs or to kind of keep that wee where it is, and then therefore the leaks happen. Or it could be that the pelvic floor is tight and it's actually getting fatigued, and again it's not supporting the pelvic organs, so those leaks are happening. So there's two sort of opposite things happening there. It could either be weak or strong, which might make you think, well, how do I get that happy medium then? What if it's weak? What if it's strong? How do you know that? One very specific way of knowing what's happening with your pelvic floor muscles is to go and see a women's health physio and get an internal exam, and they can tell you exactly how your pelvic floor is responding, how strong it is. They'll do internal exams and just test each side, the front, middle and the back, and exactly see whether you're able to get that squeeze sensation or not, or whether it's strong. Sometimes a pelvic floor can be strong. We shouldn't automatically assume that if we're leaking then there's weakness, because the same symptoms occur if it's strong or if it's tight. So it's really important not to assume that it's weakness and then do a million Kegels, because actually Kegels can make can cause a tight pelvic floor to be too tight and to struggle to let go. So and with urge incontinence, that is quite often the brain and the bladder connection. And what's happening is, as soon as the bladder starts to fill with wee, then it's sending that message to the brain that you need to empty the bladder. Now, the bladder, you'll be pleased to know, is one of the most trainable parts of our body, of our sort of internal organs. So we can retrain ourselves not to go to the toilet as much. Now, I'll tackle urge incontinence first, because I think in some ways that can be a bit easier, because there's lots of lifestyle factors that you can change, and I'm going to share those with you today so that you can actually have a think about whether any of those things you're doing and maybe you can adapt them. So with urge incontinence, it's that urgency, it's that rushing to the bathroom. Some of the things that can make it worse is having a just-in-case wee. I don't know if you've heard of a just-in-case wee. Let me know if you know that phrase. But you kind of know what I mean when, it's something that your parents might have got you into before you leave the house or before you go on a long journey. It's having a wee before you go. It's having a wee before you go into a meeting, before you do anything. Anytime you do anything, you're having a just-in-case wee. Now, what that's doing to the body is training your bladder that it's telling your bladder that it needs to empty regularly, and therefore as soon as it's, maybe there's a little bit of urine in there, then it will send that signal to your brain and you'll feel like you need a wee. So you're basically going to the toilet too many times, and it just gets into a habit. And that is a habit that you can retrain yourself not to. The other thing that can cause it is going or getting up in the middle of the night and going for a wee. So in the same way, you're training your bladder to go to the toilet. Our bodies have this clever way of, if we get up at a certain time in the evening, at night, in the middle of the night, particularly if you look at your watch and you say, oh gosh, it's 3 o'clock and I'm going to the loo, chances are the next night your body will wake you up and go, oh, it's 3 o'clock, we need to go to the loo because we did it last night. And what can happen is then you get into this cycle of needing to do it every single time. Now this one's quite an easy one to actually to retrain out of, and the answer is really, really simple in a way, and it's to stop getting up for a wee. So if this is you, if the next time you wake up in the middle of the night and you think, oh, I need a wee, ignore it. Try to ignore it. Try and roll over and go back to sleep. Now, the one thing that you can tell your body is that you can wait. You can wait the whole night because you've done it in the past. Children learn to do it when they first start potty training and then move away from, wearing nappies at night. So our bodies are capable of doing it. So if you can do that once and then the next night, and it won't be long before you are out of that habit. Try it. It'll be difficult the first time because you'll be in such a habit that you'll be like, I must get up, I'll go for a wee, and then you might have a little panic saying, well, what if I have an accident? The chances are you won't have an accident. What you'll be saying to your body is, no, we can wait, and that's what you need to do, is to tell your bladder to wait. So that's a really kind of useful tip, and I've given that tip to so many people who have contacted me and wanted support, and actually they've done that tip and not even wanted or needed to work with me any further because that's solved their problems. Because also, if you're getting up in the middle of the night, then that can kind of transfer into your daytime habits, because it's again getting your body into a regular routine of weeing so often. And then, as soon as the bladder's got a little bit of wee in it, it wants to go again. So having a good habit at night is going to translate into the morning where, what you want to be doing is when you wake up, when, 6, 7 o'clock, whenever you wake up, you need to feel that is quite a big wee, that is, that's going to be a full bladder's worth. If you start your day like that, then you're really starting well. You're kind of starting with positive habits that you can then try and take into the day, trying to tell yourself that, you can wait an hour, a couple of hours even, to go for a wee. Now with the other habit of the kind of desperate feeling of rushing to the bathroom, there's a couple of things you can do. Now, I would recommend for you to keep a diary, to kind of note down, you can be as detailed or as kind of, less vague as you want to be, is to kind of jot down how many drinks you're having, how much fluid you're having, to kind of make a mental note as well. You don't have to keep a diary, just to keep a track of what you're drinking. Now, sometimes some people are drinking too much. There is a chance that you could be drinking too much. And on that note, I am just going to have some decaf tea. I'll come to that in a minute as well. They might be drinking too much. You might not be drinking enough water or enough things with a water content in there. So keep an eye on how much you're drinking, and just to see, you can kind of take a bit of your own, kind of not educated guess, but you can use your own sense of what seems sensible. You might realise by noting it down that you're not drinking enough, or you might realise that, gosh, I'm actually drinking 10 cups of tea. That's perhaps why I'm going to the toilet a lot. So that's a good one to try. And coming on to the tea subject, there are things that do irritate the bladder as well. So things like caffeine do irritate some people more than they do others. So I know me personally, I can have one caffeinated drink a day. If I have it in the morning, I'm okay. If I have any more, then I will be going to the toilet a lot. And it does make, I do notice that I need the toilet a little bit more after I've had a caffeine drink. So if I know I've got to go on a big walk, then I probably wouldn't have a coffee, you know, an hour before or so. So you can start to think about, well, that does make me feel worse, so I perhaps won't do it, and start to try and understand your triggers and be in control of it. There's also there's certain foods might irritate you. Again, we're all different, but generally, things that are acidic, so some fruits like strawberries, tomatoes, orange juice sometimes, things with seeds in can sometimes be quite acidic for the bladder and irritate the bladder. And if we're not drinking enough water to flush it out, it mimics that sensation of wanting to go to the toilet, and you'll feel like you need to go to the toilet. And if you kind of allow yourself to do that, then the bladder thinks, oh, I'll go again in 10 minutes, and you get into this habit. So it's a bit of a cycle to kind of come out of. Another thing you can think about with, again, urge incontinence is trying to wait a little bit. If you're in a safe place, you know, if you're working at home or you're in an office, you know the toilet's only over there, so it's okay if you wait a little bit. Try and wait more and more and more. Now you can get really scientific about this, and you can jot down the time and try and extend it over time. But that is something to think about, because it's retrainable. As I said, the bladder is retrainable, and a lot of the urge incontinence problems are more of a bladder problem than necessarily your pelvic floor. So there's lots of things you can do with your bladder. So just to recap, look at irritants, look at how much fluid you're taking, and trying not to do those just in case wees, trying to get out of the habit of that, and trying to kind of find a bit of trust in your body again, so that you can start to, not to panic and not to wee every single time that you leave the house. So that's urge incontinence. Now, there is another element of that where it could be related to the pelvic floor, and this could be related to the pelvic floor feeling quite tight. Now, sometimes when we stand up, depending on what posture we're having in our body, our posture will affect the way the pelvic floor works. Now, focusing on the posture and improving the posture and standing up and getting the ribs aligned over the pelvis, and then taking some time to breathe, is going to really help relax your pelvic floor. Now, that might seem almost counterintuitive, because you're thinking, well, if I relax the pelvic floor, am I going to wee? No, you're not going to wee. What happens when we clench? If we clench and we feel anxious, so if we get up out of our chair and we suddenly go, oh, I need a wee, we kind of curl into this shape, we start clenching through the tummy, we might even start clenching, even without realising, that pelvic floor. That actually makes things worse. It actually puts more pressure on the bladder and actually makes you feel like you need a wee. So what you need to try and do is take your time to stand up, just get straight, get those ribs over the pelvis, take a nice deep breath. And again, it's a mind-body thing. So you can tell yourself, I can wait. My pelvic floor is fine. We will relax. We will walk calmly to the bathroom. And if you can get into a little practice of doing that, it's almost like a meditation in itself. If you can start to think, yeah, I can do this, I can walk calmly to the bathroom, so it's fine, I don't need to rush, it's only there. Keep talking to yourself. You can say it out loud if you want to as well, if you're in the privacy of your own home. You can do it. You can start to change these habits, and you can relax the pelvic floor and start to kind of have a better relationship with it, because sometimes it kind of, maybe you've lost trust, maybe you've had an accident once and now you've lost trust, so you feel you feel panicked, maybe you just don't feel that connected to the pelvis for whatever reason. So we can retrain that, and we can talk to ourselves, and we can be kind to ourselves and think about that. So that's urge incontinence. So there's a few things for you to try. Now, stress incontinence, so that's when, when you're getting if you're coughing and you're leaking, or you're jumping and running. And this can feel it's quite a tricky one, because it can sometimes stop you doing the activities that you love. Sometimes you'll hear people, doctors, nurses, midwives, whoever, not everybody, but some might say, you can't do those things. You know, if you've had a baby, you shouldn't be doing running, you shouldn't be doing jumping, don't do it. Well, I don't agree with that. I don't think it's useful to say don't do it. If there's activities that you want to get back to and you're currently leaking, the place that you need to start is by building strong foundations in your whole body. So this is where something like my approach with realigning, stretching and strengthening is really going to help you. Because if you think about, if you're leaking following a surgery, so it might be a hysterectomy or abdominal surgery, or if you're leaking post-birth, whether that's an abdominal birth or a vaginal birth, both can cause leaking. Well, both might, you know, one isn't better than the other to sort of avoid pelvic floor problems. Or if you're going into menopause because the body's going through another significant change. There are the three sort of main areas, main phases in your life where you might experience leaking. If you think about those things, particularly the surgery and the birth, your body has gone through a lot of things. It's almost, if you treated it like, in a way, like an injury, although it's not an injury, your body needs to heal. So let's forget the word injury, but the healing part of that aspect is you need to give yourself time to rebuild that strength, to get your body working in the way it needs to work. And that isn't, you know, it's not about getting a flat stomach or, you know, getting tight abs. It's actually about building strength, making sure that your muscles and your muscles are strong enough, they're stretched in the right areas, that they're not tight in any specific areas that might be inhibiting movement in your body, and taking it slowly and working with, you know, with someone on a personal level, or you know, joining my rehab course to work through those stages step by step. Because when you know you've got the right foundations, then you can start adding in, you can start increasing the exercise or whatever it is. And that goes the same for occasional, you know, coughing, sneezing kind of leaking as well. That the chances are your pelvic floor isn't able to respond as it should do. What, in the same way that we said at the beginning about urge incontinence, your pelvic floor is either not contracting because it's you know, there's a weakness there, and in that case, you know, that's a good idea to go to the physio, woman's health physio, a specialist, to see how you can strengthen that. But you know, 8 times out of 10, maybe even 9 times out of 10, it's actually too strong and it's tight, and actually it's struggling to release, it's struggling to relax, and therefore it gets so tired because it's always in this contracted position. And then when you do happen to cough, it's tense, and then it just can't kind of hold, you know, it can't hold what it needs to hold, and then, you know, these accidents happen. Breathing is really important, to focus on your breathing mechanics, I'll call it, so the technique in which we breathe, the area in the body that we bring breath into, so bringing it into the rib cage, positioning the rib cage over the pelvis so that our abdominal area has the right space in which to bring in the air, is really vital. It's so it's almost, it seems almost too simple for it to be effective, but it is really effective to get your mechanics right in your breathing, to get that technique right, because you'd be surprised at how many of us are, you know, breathing up here in our chest because we feel tense, and if we feel tense because we're panicking about our pelvic floor, or, you know, if you think about the way that you just about to sneeze, your breath's here, isn't it? The breath is here, so that, you know, there's all sorts of pressure perhaps going down into the pelvic floor at that same time when we actually need the pelvic floor to be relaxing. So learning how to breathe and having a regular breathing practice is really beneficial for you. The other thing is having time to relax, and I don't mean just sitting on the sofa, kind of like with a cup of tea and watching Netflix. That's nice. That's self-care. But I'm talking about constructive rest, where you're lying on the floor. So if you do yoga classes regularly, something like a shavasana, where you're lying on the floor, maybe your legs can be up against the wall, or you can just lie on the floor, eyes closed, The good thing I always say to people is to get your phone, set it for 5 minutes, close your eyes and relax for 5 minutes and do a 5 minute relaxation. Now, I reckon everybody's got time to do a 5 minute relaxation in their day, that no one's going to notice them if they're away for 5 minutes, even if you've got millions of children. I hope. If you struggle, let me know and I'll think of another way you can do it. But I think probably we can find 5 minutes in a day because it's not too much, to actually have that proper rest, because it gives our nervous system a chance to relax and to calm. And when our nervous system is relaxed, so if you imagine the opposite of being relaxed is in the fight and flight mode, if we're always in that panic state and the muscles are tensing, the pelvic floor is always tensing, it's not able to do its job as effectively. So we need to spend time releasing the pelvic floor and relaxing it, and having that time resting on the floor is just really beneficial and gives you time just to tune in. And it also gives you time just to get that mind-body connection, you know, to think about the way that you're breathing, to put some trust back in your pelvic floor. And sometimes I think we underestimate the connection of the mind and the effect of the mind on our physical body. And many of the people that I work with when I do work one-to-one is actually they've undergone some sort of trauma in their pelvic area that you can kind of link the pelvic floor problems to, and that they're holding tension there. So trauma might be birth trauma, it might be, you know, post-hysterectomy, it might be that sense of losing the connection in your body, that things are changing, you know, our bodies change through menopause. Just losing that connection can be really detrimental to us. And I mean, that's why I include a yoga practice in pelvic floor rehab, and that's what we do inside our online community, the Happy Pelvis Club, because it gives you time to tune in, to listen to your body, to kind of start to learn about it, to learn how you work and what you need, and to notice times when you feel stressed, or notice when, oh yeah, that hip's a little bit tight, or yeah, I haven't been breathing as well as I could have been, maybe I could spend some more time doing it. And that's why yoga is so important. It's not that yoga necessarily, there's a range, you know, there aren't a set pattern of exercises that are going to cure you of your pelvic floor problems. It's that it is the time and space for you to make that connection, to develop your body awareness, and of course then, you know, integrate corrective exercise, integrate posture, integrate those lifestyle things that you can do that we've talked about today, to start improving things and start helping yourself. I hope that's helped you. I hope you're able to take something away from this and implement it, and let me know if you try any of the things. Let me know how you go, and if you've got any specific questions, and again, pop them in the comments, or feel free to direct message me if you want to, because I know sometimes we don't want to share openly what's going on, so feel free to send me a message and we can have a little chat, or I'll do another live on that, but of course keep it anonymous. So do take care of your pelvic floor, spend some time tuning in, listening to yourself, and I will see you next time on our next live.